I want you guys to imagine that perfect sweet little grandma that makes you cookies and is super sweet. Yeah, the one in this video is kind of the opposite of that. So yeah, I've got a couple scary Reddit stories to read you today. And while we're doing that, I'm going to be working on my underground cave city in Minecraft. The first story today is from r/no sleep from user Tiara MBC. I made a friend with the girl in the shed, and she shares the same freckle I have. I always hated going to my dad's mother's house. To make things easier, I'll call her grandma for this, but I don't see her as such. To this day, I can't tell you who hated whom more, but there is a big difference. I was a kid and she was a grown woman. In front of my parents, she acted the role of the loving grandma. Her lies weave a story of a clumsy girl who loved to play at her house. And me, terrified of what would happen if I said otherwise, agreed with her wonderful tales of how I got new bruises and cuts. The one thing that kept me going was that my stays with her were only temporary. At most, I stayed a few hours with her, waiting for my parents to get out of work or come back from their date night. But during one of their date nights, they never came back. No one knows who did it, but someone cut the brakes. They never made it to the restaurant, and the only place they had been to before that was Grandma's house. In the end, it was considered a freak accident, even though everything said it was anything but. When my maternal grandma offered to take me in, I felt some relief in my ocean of grief. This relief was short-lived, as Grandma fought to keep me and won by saying I would have more normalcy with her and that unlike my maternal side, I had many cousins to grow up with and aunts and uncles to spoil me. My maternal grandma had no other children besides my mother and no extended family to offer. My opinion on the matter was irrelevant to the court, so I was never asked, and I ended up with my paternal grandma. "You will pay for everything." She smiled as she looked down on me the first day I was there. I trembled at her words, knowing she would make me pay for whatever she thought I was at fault for. I won't talk about all the horrors this woman made me go through and how everyone turned a blind eye to it, except for the shed. Outside the house, in the perfectly kept garden, there was a small shed. It was full of equipment, not insulated, and according to her, that's where the monster lived. Anytime she got tired of me, she would lock me in there and say she hoped this time the monster would eat me. By the time I was living with her, I no longer believed in said monster. I had already realized that she was the real monster. Still, I was 8, had just lost my parents, and the last thing I wanted was to be alone in that shed. Any company would be better than the empty shed. So that night, when she dragged me there, I screamed my lungs out, begging her to let me sleep in the house, knowing the consequences I would face in the morning for screaming too loudly when people could hear me. "Please, Grandma, I want to be inside with you," I cried. Side note, guys, this is literally the worst grandma I could ever imagine. I'm loving how the author's portraying her, though. Let me know if you guys had a monster grandma. I hope you didn't, though. She didn't answer back. Instead, she gave me a smug look that quickly contorted to anger once more. She pushed me inside the shed and closed the door without a second glance. I wanted to cry, but the tears never came. Instead, I moved some shredders and made sure no spiders were in there. I thought of lying down and sleeping, but instead I got up angry, wanting to hit something, break things, just feel something other than sadness and fear. But as I was about to hit the wall, I heard something. Or someone, and I froze. "Please don't hurt yourself." The voice of a girl came from the darkest part of the shed. "Please, it hurts a lot." Small pale hands with ruptured knuckles came out of the darkness. I tried to back away, but there wasn't anywhere to back away into. I couldn't take my eyes off those hands. Those tiny hands that match mine in size. So broken. Full of unhealed gashes and bruises, and when I finally looked up, there she stood, looking at me in as much surprise as I felt. "You see me," she whispered. "I do, but who are you? What's your name?" I asked. The fear I had felt a few seconds ago had turned to curiosity. "I don't know." The girl's voice trembled as if she were about to cry. "I know. What if we choose a name for you?" I said excitedly. The girl looked at me and nodded. "I'm Leia, by the way," I said as I extended my hands towards her. She slowly took my hands, but the moment she touched me, my heart started to race. Dizziness led to nausea, and my vision blurred for a second, and then it was all back to normal. "Are you okay?" she asked, concerned. "Yeah, I don't know what happened," I responded as I sat down. "Be careful when you sit down, not to squish the spiders." When she looked at me, I noticed something both familiar and strange. She had an eye freckle, just like my dad and me. After my classmates made fun of me and said I had dirt in my eye, my mom explained that wasn't the case. She told me that my dad loved me so much that he had given me a piece of him to carry with me. "This is so cool. We both had the same eye freckle. Maybe we're sisters," I said excitedly. "That would be nice," she smiled. "Oh, a name, I forgot. What about Iria? I think it's really pretty." I looked at her hopefully. "I like it, thank you," she said as she went to hug me. The same feeling of dizziness, as if the world had gone wrong, came back the moment she touched me. I involuntarily shuddered, but hugged her anyway. I had decided at that moment that Iria was my sister and we would be the best of friends. "I'm glad to have a sister," she whispered. "I'm glad to have one too." I smiled, and for the first time, I didn't hate the shed. I had found something I had always wanted, and when morning came, I would tell her to come live with me. Grandma's house wasn't great, but together we could make it better. I'm not sure when I fell asleep. All I remember was talking with Iria about all the cool things we could do together. I told her we could go visit my maternal grandma, so she could experience having a nice grandma. Iria didn't know how old she was, so we decided I would be the older sister, and as such, I had to make sure she was happy and safe. "Get up, hurry," Aunt Manuela yelled at me. She lived next door with my 3 cousins and her always wandering husband. "The social workers will be here soon, so you better clean yourself up and behave. You know what happens if you don't," she threatened. I quickly got up and ran back to the house to shower and be ready to have my hair pulled into a perfect ponytail by her. Not obeying would mean no dinner and probably no breakfast either. In my haste, I had forgotten about Iria. I showered extra quickly and put on the new clothes laid out for me and went outside to the shed. But when I opened it, she wasn't there. I thought maybe she had gone home or something and went back inside the house to get my hair pulled. The show went as usual. Grandma and Aunt Manuela doted on me and showed the social workers my room, painted in what they said was my favorite color, pink. I hated pink. Aunt Manuela would call my cousins over to come and play with me while the adults talked with the social worker. Once the visit was over, things went back to normal. I no longer had access to the room, and my cousins weren't allowed to play with me. During the day, I was never sent to the shed, but now I wanted to go back there and hopefully see Iria once more. That night, I wasn't sent to the shed. Grandma was too happy with the visit and continuous money she was getting from having to tolerate me. I didn't sleep much, wondering if my little sister was doing okay. "You're so ugly," Regina pushed me to the ground. "No, I'm not," I yelled back. I knew that if I touched her, I would get in so much trouble. "Yes, you are. My mom said so, because you look like your ugly mother," Regina mocked me. And I lost it. I didn't care if she made fun of me, but no one made fun of my mom. I got up from the floor and I punched her directly in her nose, just like my mom had taught me. Blood splattered everywhere and she gave a loud shriek. "What did you do to my precious girl?" Aunt Estrella yelled from the house entrance. Her whale-like body tried to move quickly, but her feet could only go so quickly. Before reaching her daughter, she slapped me hard. I looked at her terrified, but her focus was back on her wailing and blood-soaked daughter. I felt some relief until I felt Grandma's hand on my shoulder. When I looked up, she was smiling, and that was so much worse than anger. Again, I won't go much into detail as this isn't what the story is about, but I did end up with bruised hands after Aunt Estrella hit them repeatedly with a belt, with Grandma and Regina as witnesses. That night, I was dragged into the shed to think about what I had done wrong. I cried and cried, hating my life, but hating those people who had hurt me even more. I was so absorbed in my pain that I screamed when a gentle hand touched me. I immediately regretted it when I saw Iria jump back frightened. "I'm sorry." I moved towards Iria. "I didn't know you were here." "Sorry, I saw you crying." Iria moved to sit next to me. Look, our hands match now. I wiped my tears, flinching at the pain, and smiled when I saw Iria smile. We sat there in silence for a while. I wanted to bring up an idea I had had for a while, but was scared to say out loud. But my idea of Iria coming to live inside the house wasn't going to work. What if they hurt her too? Iria, let's run away, I said seriously, and when I saw her freeze up, I kept going. It's okay, I can take care of you. I can steal some food, and if we get to my grandma, I'm sure. I can't leave the shed, Iria interrupted me. I can come during the day and open the door. I stopped as she shook her head. I can't leave. I've tried. Iria started to cry. I've tried many times. I just can't. Sorry, if you want to go. No, I could never leave you. I hugged her. I'll stay with you. Iria spoke, but I didn't understand a word she said. The world swirled around me. I felt lightheaded as everything started to become dark, and once more, everything was all right. I didn't want to worry Iria, so I didn't ask what she had said, and just nodded. Besides, you don't have to worry about Estrella for much longer. Iria sat back down and started to draw on the floor with her finger. What do you mean that I don't have to worry about Aunt Estrella? I asked. She's going to die soon, she said as she continued to draw on the floor. How do you know? I asked as I started to draw on the floor too. The darkness in which I had first seen Iria emerge seemed to be creeping closer to us. I tried to back away, but she was unbothered as it made contact with her finger. I don't know, Iria answered. I just know. I didn't ask anything else. Instead, I joined her once more to draw on the floor and smiled when I saw she had drawn us together. The rest of the night, we created a world of magic and happiness with our drawings. Having Iria in my life did make things better. No matter what happened, what kind of beatings I took, or how much hunger I faced, I knew I would see her too. From time to time, I managed to sneak in the chalk colors my cousins left outside. We would draw inside the shed and erase everything before morning. A week later, we got the news that Aunt Estrella had died from a heart attack. She had been out eating burgers with Regina when she suddenly hit the floor and never got back up. Regina went to live with her father, and I never had to see her again. Grandma locked herself in her room, only coming out to eat whatever was not rotten in the fridge. As long as I avoided her during her outings, I didn't have to worry about her beating me. Aunt Manuela came from time to time to check on her and yell at me to clean the house. Since I had no supervision, I would go to the shed at night and sneak in sandwiches for us both. I enjoyed my time with Iria and started to intentionally make Grandma angry so she would send me to the shed. I didn't care that she would hit me or yell at me anymore because it meant I got to spend time with Iria. One night, after Grandma shut the door to the house, I turned to show Iria the bracelets I had made us from stolen beads and thread when I saw her rocking herself in the dark corner, crying. I approached her, but this time she flinched away from me. I wanted to get closer, but the darkness scared me. It embraced Iria. I'm unsure if protecting her or trying to keep her as its own. But as Iria sobbed once more, I made my trembling legs move towards her. After all, I was the big sister, and I had to take care of her. As I hugged her, the usual dizziness took over, but this time it took a much stronger hold of my heart. I felt the air leave my lungs, and the darkness became heavy, too heavy for me to hold. No, Iria screamed. And finally, I was able to breathe. The air in my lungs had never felt so good. I hadn't noticed that I'd peed myself and felt embarrassed. I sat up, covering myself as best as possible and hoping Iria couldn't smell my soiled clothes. I'm sorry, I managed to cough out. I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for, but felt like I had to. I don't want you to die, she cried. The world became silent for a second. I couldn't hear Iria's cries, nor my own, as I processed what she had just said. I was going to die. I was going to die, just like my mom and dad did. I wasn't ready to die. Iria, I won't die, I said as I wiped the tears off my eyes. I have to take care of you. I had dropped the bracelets in my trance, but picked them up and handed one to Iria. I made sure to put the one heart-shaped bead on her bracelet. She took it, carefully, making sure not to touch me, and put it on. "I don't want to lose you," she cried. "I was alone for so long, and finally I have you. I have a sister to talk with and have fun. I don't want that to ever end." "Don't worry, as long as we're both wearing these bracelets, we'll always be together." I tried to smile. That night, we didn't do much. We took turns crying, but as much as I tried to approach her, she never let me get close. I never knew when I fell asleep, but this time when I woke up, I felt a pang of sadness at not seeing Iria. While I knew better than to be crying when Grandma or Aunt Manuela opened the shed, I couldn't help myself but sob. Grandma looked at me in disgust as she dragged me back inside the house. But right before making it in, she stopped as she felt something that shouldn't have been on my wrist. I felt my feet lift from the ground as she lifted me from my arm to look at the bracelet with the stolen beads. "You thief! How dare you take things of others? With all the things I give you and have sacrificed for you, you still dare to steal." She yelled at me as she threw me inside the house. I tried to respond, but I couldn't get a word out before she kicked me hard on my stomach. New tears ran down my face, but I ignored them as I tried to get away from her. "It's your fault my only son is gone, and you can't even be a good daughter to honor him. I gave you a home when no one wanted to, and this is how you pay? By being a thief?" She screamed as she went after me. I wasn't sure where to go, but I knew I had to get away from her. As she continued to yell at me, I ran. I could hear the clap of her sandals on the floor, a noise that to this day still haunts me as I try to get away from her. Then I felt something hard hit my head. I fell forward and saw blood running down my neck. Next to me was a heavy lamp that my dad had given her many years ago. I tried to get up, despite the world swimming around me, and I didn't want to die. She grabbed my leg and started to drag me into the kitchen. I screamed for someone to help, knowing the only one that would hear me was Aunt Manuela, and she would pretend everything was all right. "I hate you. I hate seeing you every single day. I hate the way you look, the way you speak, and how you even move. But you know what? You need to pay for everything, and I've enjoyed this so much," she said at me with a crazed face. As I saw her grab the mallet, I managed to free myself from her. Maybe it was out of instinct, but I ran towards the shed. I didn't want to die, and I didn't know what to do. As I opened the door of the shed, Grandma pulled at my hair, but instantly froze when she looked inside. "Iria, help me," I begged. Grandma let go of my hair, and I dropped to the floor. Her face contorted in terror. I didn't know what was going on, but Iria looked at Grandma with so much fury. "This can't be." Grandma's voice trembled. For the first time, Iria walked out of the shed, followed by the darkness that always embraced her. She walked directly to Grandma and looked her in the eyes. She then grabbed the mallet and dropped it to the floor. "It's time," Iria said calmly as she took hold of Grandma's hand. I could see her shudder the way I did whenever I touched Iria, but unlike me, she tried to let go. But no matter how much she tried, Iria wouldn't let her go. Instead, she was dragging her inside the shed and into the darkness. Grandma screamed to be let go. Aunt Manuela came out running from her house and froze at the sight of Iria and Grandma. Iria took one look at her, but went back to her task. "Iria, what's going on?" I asked, somehow feeling this would be the last time I saw her. Iria looked at me and smiled as she raised her hand with the bracelet. "I think I was supposed to be the big sister after all. I will always be with you," Iria said as she closed the door of the shed behind her. Aunt Manuela and I heard the screams of Grandma inside, but neither of us moved until everything was silent. But when Aunt Manuela opened the shed, there was no one. The darkness that always filled the shed was gone, alongside Iria and Grandma. There was no way to explain what happened, so when Aunt Manuela was asked about Grandma, she just said that one day she was gone, to who knows where. When she was offered custody, she refused, saying she never wanted to see me again. I went to live with my maternal grandma after the incident, and I could finally live life. I could be a child once more and enjoyed being loved. Years later, I learned that Iria's real name had been Dolores, and she was my father's older sister. Grandma had hated her, and one day she went missing. Everyone assumed she was a rebellious child, but now I think I figured out what happened. I'm now a mother to a girl, born with the same freckle on her eye. I named her Iria, after the girl who was my friend, sister, and protector. I still wear the bracelet I made for us, and hope that she knows I still think of her. Now, as I look at my daughter, I understand what my mom has said about the freckle in our eyes. Because I couldn't love anyone else more in the world, and now she gets to carry that love and that of those who came before us. Wow, that was an amazing story with a great ending. I love that ending. I don't know what it is, just about karma coming back to bite somebody evil that just gives me so much joy. So yeah, R.I.P. Grandma. You deserved every bit of what happened to you. Huge shout out to the author, TRAMBC. I'm going to link their Reddit profile so you can go check out more of their stories because very talented writer. Let me know what you guys thought about that one. The next story is also from r/NoSleep from user DoubtOK4107. There's something wrong with everyone outside. I got home late from my job at around 4 in the morning after a long shift from one of our town's local bars. I had the whole day off tomorrow planned out, sleeping in till the afternoon, then pizza and movies until I had to go to bed. But when I woke up to the sound of an alert on my phone that was much more powerful than my standard phone alarm could hope to be, I shot up alert in bed as if I was expecting to be dragged from under the covers out the door. I wiped the sleep from my eyes to see what the hell my phone was making so much noise over, when my vision focused to see the huge message laid out in red on my home screen. My heart began to pump faster at the sight of "Stay inside." I got out of bed, my heart beating faster. I couldn't help but think about the thousands of different implications this message had. The most obvious solution to me knowing what was going on was to just open my drapes and look outside. But I couldn't help but delay myself. In my mind, and in those few seconds between seeing that message and waking up, my perception of those drapes changed drastically from just keeping out of the sun to keeping out any threat that may be lingering behind them. I decided I would rather check on social media to see what was happening, as if it would make a difference. It was like I could pretend it was happening to someone else. I was already a borderline recluse aside from going to work, so this might be the poke over the edge into a full paranoid hermit breakdown. Everything I tried to look up about what the message meant was being taken down in front of me. Every post that dared to ask what's happening outside, or have you seen what's happened to them, was promptly removed for breaking some rule I'm sure they made up on the spot. The only slight piece of evidence I was able to see was about 5 seconds of video, which I could tell was taken in the center of town. In those few short seconds, I saw what looked to be some sort of grayish powder falling gently downwards toward the people enjoying their weekend out in the summer festival, who pointed upwards nervously at the strange sight. The video was taken down before anything more happened, but that alone was making me feel unwell. Wrapping myself in my bed to try and take back what coziness was lost, I sat there staring at the window, amping myself up to just go on and take a look already. But that fear of the unknown had already made itself a nice new home inside my amygdala, acting like a set of chains to keep me safe from whatever was lurking just outside. I needed to talk to my roommate. Hopefully they would tell me what I wanted to hear. Some stupid reassurance that would put this whole thing to bed. So when I knocked on her door and walked around the rest of the darkened apartment to find her, I only flicked on the light switch in the kitchen to see the note she had left. "Hey, heard you were still sleeping, so I'm going to get some food. Text me if you need anything. Be back soon. Sarah." My phone buzzed. "Coming back now. Please open the door. Forgot my keys." Now, in the past 15 minutes, I had seen and heard almost practically nothing from the outside world, so my paranoia was in full swing, while other parts of my brain were trying to put out the fire that the first alert had started. Knock, knock. The sound broke through the fragile silence, jolting me. Sarah was back. I stood there staring at the front door as if I had never seen it before. Why was I waiting? She's right there behind that door with answers about the outside world, so I just need to unlock the door and let her in. So why was I shaking so much? Knock, knock. "Could you let me in?" It was her voice. That was a stupid thought I had. Why wouldn't it be? But still, something was off, just ever so slightly with her voice. It had a slight rasp to it, as if she was struggling to get the words out. I called out to her nervously. "Sorry, I'm struggling to find my keys, funnily enough. How was town? Anything happen while you were out?" I was holding my keys to my chest so tightly, I thought they would puncture my skin while waiting for her response. "It was fine." Her voice came curtly, with more of a hint of anger this time. "Did you see the alert?" I asked desperately, trying to keep my own voice from falling apart. It felt like a lifetime before she answered. "Oh, that was just a test. You heard on the news they were doing that, right?" Her attitude had changed dramatically, as if she was putting everything into this performance. I couldn't describe the fear I had felt in that moment. All of this just feels wrong. I leaned against the door to see through the peephole, but there was only blackness. She was covering it. I was working up the courage to ask one last question that I knew was going to change everything. The situation wasn't going away, not until I asked. "Why are you covering the peephole?" Silence. Horrible, deathly silence. The seconds passed like hours before Sarah responded in a tone of barely contained rage. "Why are you trying to look at me? There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not like the others." Taking a few shaky steps back, I listened to her words drop to a barely audible whisper. "I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine." She did this for the next few minutes on repeat, while I stood there in the hallway with all color draining from my face. And before I had another chance to ask a question, she began hitting the door. Bang! It was terrifying to listen to, but the door was strong and had no signs of being broken down. I hoped at least, not wanting to put that to the test. What Sarah was doing was desperate. If she wasn't going to be let in, she was going to try with everything she had to break down this door. In the meantime, I took chairs and other furniture to put up against the door, while hyperventilating. A short time later, her hits and screams against the unyielding door ceased. Soon after, sobs could be heard. Tears were streaming down my face from the stress and betrayal we both probably felt from each other. I pled with her in desperation. "Please just tell me what's happening outside." Sarah's cries died down. "Just go outside," was all she said before I could hear her walk away, sobbing loudly again, intensifying the guilt I felt tenfold. After I couldn't hear her anymore, I went and sat down in the living room on the only chair I hadn't forced up against the door, then slowly let my eyes drift toward the windows and the drapes that were sealing me in here. It was time to look outside. At first, I pulled the soft fabric back ever so slightly. I'm fully aware I'm making it worse for myself, but I can't delay this any longer. I swing the drapes to the side to reveal nothing but the normal sight of the city below, except, where is everyone? I live on the second floor in an apartment complex with a perfect view of the busiest places in town. With my late nights and even later awakenings, the noise they would make at all hours of the day would keep me up for hours, so why was it quiet now? I scanned down below to see if anyone was walking around outside, but nothing. The only thing I could gather was that something had happened to make everyone rush inside. Then I saw it, just about to melt out of sight. The street was covered in some sort of dark pink dust. I tried making sense of it, just to clutch at anything. Maybe it was some sort of petals they put out for a festival, or it was just trash that had been dumped here. All these theories fell flat on their face when I spotted one person taking a brave step outside. From what I could tell, he was a man in his 40s and was just stepping out of a convenience store with a few cautious steps, in the same way you would creep around your house trying not to wake up your parents coming back from a night out. I was so desperate to talk to someone, to make sense of this, that I was about to open my window to yell at them for help, when the sky started to darken and it began to snow dark gray dust again. He turned back quickly, trying to retreat to the safety of the indoors, but when his hands reached for the door, he found it locked. I could see another man standing on the other side of the door, shaking his head in fear at the sight of the weather outside. I could hear the man yelling from up here, "Just let me back in, it hasn't touched me yet, look!" It was the same type of helpless plea that Sarah had done, and just like her, he began to bang against the door in desperation. But by this point, the dust had fallen in little clumps dancing in the air, then gently landed on his head, arms, and back. Then that's when he began to scream, and so did I as I watched him change. The dust seemed to bury itself in his skin. His body became rigid like he was standing at attention, but while his body was stiff, I could only see his bare arms that his skin began to move like some invisible force was pulling it back, treating his body like a toy to suit their sick amusement. The skin on his arms tightened and pulled back, so much that his finger bones started to poke through the skin of his hands, like his flesh was a type of glove and his skeleton was just taking them off. His finger bones were covered in remnants of sinew and gore as he tore his way out of his own body. Then he turned away to face the direction of my building. In agony and fear, possibly, to stop the horrified stares he was receiving from the others behind the windows inside the store. Next, I could see what had happened to his face. Where the dust had settled on top of his skull, it seemed to pull with desperation out of the back of his head. A thick flesh bubble had started to form where all the skin was being turned like a crank that was being twisted and turned. So, with each twist, all the parts of his face pulled back. His eyes were wider than they had ever been. His ability to blink was taken away, so he had no choice but to watch what happened to himself. His nostrils split and broke, making his cartilage a white translucent beak that pushed the front of his face apart like a t-shirt being torn. His top teeth tore through his lips, while the sides of his mouth were pulled back in a nightmarish grin that he had no say in. After it seemed like the twisting had stopped, the bubble of gore that sat on his head, which had collected all the pulled muscles, sloughed off slowly, dripping onto the floor. Its work done, it fell to the ground, and from what I was able to tell, it was feasting on its bounty. The dark pinkish blob fell apart in seconds, consuming itself like a hungry parasite and melting like strawberry ice cream in the hot sun, leaving what was left of the man, now a nightmare, standing there in the street, with nothing else to do but scream in pain and look at himself with his forced open eyelids at the reflections of the windows around him. Recoiling from the window in horror, I tried desperately to wipe the sight of his grotesque body from my mind. Had that been what happened to Sarah? Was she now wandering around out there with the same look of constant surprise on her face? While pushing myself off the floor of the living room, the sound of breaking glass could be heard. I didn't even have to look to know he broke back in through the window of the store. I looked anyway. The fact that he didn't go into shock and collapse after suffering was making my guts turn inside out. But I imagine the only thing left that he could feel, aside from the obvious pain, was the rage and betrayal he felt towards those who abandoned him out there in the dust clouds. Horrified screaming could be heard from inside the store, echoing out through the empty streets. No one was coming to save them, least of all me. All I could do was watch as he dragged the few people into the afternoon overcast and became covered in the same dust. I hid in shame behind the door of my living room, wrapping my arms around my legs, listening to the cries of all those people as they changed into something you would tell around a campfire. Later, when it began to die down, I forced myself to look behind the drapes one more time to see if at last the dust cloud had moved on, only to see all the unblinking monsters down below had disappeared, all except for one that could still be seen, that was dashing for the front doors of my apartment complex. The sound of their wet shoes, filled with their own blood slapping against the concrete, all with impossibly wide eyes fixed on me. Their scampering footsteps could be heard from down the hall, while I could do nothing but arm myself with a kitchen knife and hold it tight. The look on their face terrified me. I could see those bloodshot eyes of theirs that now only contained the spark of a madman. Whatever they had been afflicted with, it had not even left them their sanity, almost as if they were compelled to take more people out there in the dust. The door to the hallway on this floor swung open and slammed against the wall. Others were already inside the building, banging on my neighbors' doors in false search of sanctuary. They knocked on the doors with pleas. "There's something out here. My children are in danger." Or lies. "You need to get your family out of here. Please just come outside." These came from their broken mouths and pulled back grins, and were just a ploy to get someone to open the door. The horde of nightmares would take care of the rest. It wasn't long before I heard the screams of people I barely knew echoing all around me. I looked through my peephole again and saw a few people who had foolishly chosen to open their doors, either in hopes of doing the right thing or escaping whatever other monster had been dreamt up. Instead, they were taken quickly, almost paraded through the hall and down the stairs. And if all else failed, the creatures would resort to bashing down the doors, smashing their bones and exposed muscles against the hardwood while everyone, including the people in the hall, wailed in terror. Then, striding across the hall, an almost unfamiliar face returned to greet me. Sarah. Unlike last time, she didn't cover the peephole, letting me see what had become of her. She was like the others now, a feral, maddened thing whose only purpose was to drag others into their agony. The worst part was she didn't say a word. She just stared directly into the peephole with her now fully exposed eyes, like she knew I was staring right back at her. I had no idea how long she stood there. My body trembled and my feet glued to the floor. She knew it was only a matter of time before they got in. Where was I supposed to go? Watching them shove another poor soul outside to be pulled apart, stretched, and molded into another beast felt like witnessing an execution every single time. And after the cruel process was over, they would move on to the nearest building in search of more victims. The clouds reacted like a sensor whenever someone untouched stepped out into the open. I checked the peephole compulsively, hoping Sarah would eventually move on, but she never did. She just stood there waiting. Her eyes must have been in unbearable pain. All of theirs must have been. Over the past few hours, they'd begun struggling to navigate, moving more like bats, pouncing on any small noise that dared to reveal itself. Late into the night, Sarah and a few others must have grown tired of waiting for people to come out, because they started slamming their grotesque bodies even harder against the doors. The sound of breaking bones and splattering flesh against wood made me flinch every single time. Sooner or later, that door is going to give. That's why I'm trying to post this now. I don't know why this is happening, or why every attempt to get the word out gets taken down, but this is my attempt. I'm trapped in here with nothing but a kitchen knife. I've never hurt anyone before, and I still don't want to, because only a few hours ago, those things outside were people. I'm writing this now from inside one of my closets, hoping I can stay hidden long enough for them to finally leave. They're inside. I'll update this as soon as they're gone. Until then, please, if you're outside, find somewhere to hide as quickly as possible. Good luck. Geez, how are we supposed to know if that gets a part 2 or not? I'm assuming that probably doesn't. I'm thinking they probably got her. Anyways, DoubtOK4107, great story. Their stuff's going to be linked down in the description as well. Huge shout out to my channel members. As always, thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you guys do want to further support the channel, that link's going to be down in the description. However, it is not ever a requirement, always a choice. You don't have to. If you liked today's video, please don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. And if you didn't like it, maybe you'll like tomorrow's video. I upload every single day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.